Okay, let's move on to the SAVE Act. So Senate Majority Leader John Thune, once again at the center of the right's fury. He told reporters that no, he is not going to be going nuclear, getting rid of the filibuster to try to pass the SAVE Act. Just a reminder for anyone who's not familiar, again, this is this bill that requires voter ID to register to vote. Very popular, not just with Republicans, but with a lot of voters, 80% of voters, according to polling. But Democrats are super against it and say they absolutely want to go there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we talked about this a little bit earlier this week. Anna Paulina Luna, a Florida Republican, she had been one of the final holdouts on this spending agreement. She went to the White House, spoke to the president, apparently spoke to John Thune, and came out and said she believed she had an agreement with the Senate Majority Leader that he was going to make sure this thing passed. She tells, a lot of people publicly about this. They get excited on the right. And then all of a sudden, Thune comes out and says, actually, I never made that promise. And here's the political reality. Let's play the first element. John Thune.
Point in the realm in the Senate is floor time. There's a finite amount of it. And we have a lot of things we have to do. There's a housing bill that's awaiting action, hopefully a market structure bill, possibly permitting reform, farm bill, highway bill. You can go right down the list. Russia sanctions, there are a whole bunch of things that could be teed up for action on the floor of the Senate. And so you have to make some judgments, and the conference will have a conversation about that. I've committed to that we will talk about that idea. As I said, we will vote on the SAVE Act, but exercising or triggering a talking filibuster has ramifications, implications that I think everybody needs to be aware of. So we will have those discussions, but that's obviously ties the floor up for an indefinite amount of time with not only unlimited debate,
we can get out of this.
Let's get out of this.
I have to say, the only thing missing was, does anyone have like a post office they want? Nate, can somebody bring something forward so we don't have to do this?
John Thune saying, we don't have time for that. How's that going with the right?
That was the Senate equivalent of, I think you're a really nice guy, but I don't want to date you. I mean, that was literally the biggest, we've got, he was looking at Shelley Moore Capital. Like we've got something grass growing. We've got to watch the grass grow. We've got a birthday party for one of the staffers. And we've got a lot of, and also the planning party committee has got to meet on Friday with the HOA that was horrible. And I think it's another sellout of the priorities of the base. And I hope the House guys don't let them, get off the hook on this. But the idea that permitting reform, my God, I'm sure it's important. It's probably important to a lot of folks. And it is. Just in terms of the regulatory agenda. I get it. But are you kidding me?
Too, actually.
Huh?
It's bipartisan too, actually. But
right. But like,
they're all about bipartisan.
We don't have any time. We've got to do nothing, and we've got to go home. And that was the lamest thing. It was pathetic.
To be clear, he said he did say they are going to vote on it, but it's just going to get shut down procedurally.
After we do the other stuff.
All right.
Eventually.
The best line in there was, and Russia sanctions, which, by the way, have been on the table for, I think, 14 months now. It's like Tuesday.
Would you say, Thune, though, just in terms of how he's viewed by the base, Sean, since he's in the spotlight, look, he's not Mitch McConnell resented, right? It's not the same level of resentment that the base had for Mitch McConnell.
Not yet.
I was going to say, do you think he ultimately will end up there just because that's the nature of being?
Well, the difference is that right now, President Trump still speaks very favorably of his relationship with him and what he's doing. I think once, as I've said before in a lot of things, once you cross that Rubicon, it's hard to come back.
Yeah.
I think so this is going to be interesting to me to see how long that goes. And I think the president's going to get more and more pressure. He's clearly publicly and personally supportive of the SAVE Act. I think it's going to come to a point where it's like, why is this not getting done? So I think that if I were Thune, I'd find some way of getting it scheduled for a vote and cutting this out because people want this. There's no excuses. It's just not, to me, it's going to come. And it's just, you're kicking the can further and further and getting a lot more resentment and the base a lot more pissed off. And if I can tie two random things together, you think about the comments on the Hyde Amendment and then the comments on the Second Amendment. The base is getting a little pissy with some of the fundamentals of conservative philosophy, like what we believe in, very pro-life, very supportive of the Second Amendment. And now you're saying like, hey, we don't have time for the SAVE Act. Like you've got to start doing stuff that get the base energized going into a midterm when Donald Trump's not on the ballot, right? He can get people fired up, but they need a reason to go out there and vote. And if you're Congress and you keep crapping on the agenda, you're not going to inspire a lot of motivation for people to go out, knock on doors, make phone calls, and put up yard signs.
Speaking of base enthusiasm.
Well, hold on. I mean, we do have to say the reason that Thune does not want to bring this up is there is a very significant part of the Republican conference that is loath to put the federal government in the middle of elections because it's a state's issue. And it has been the Republican Senate that has fought against Democratic efforts for 30 years to bring the federal. No, Sean, I get it. I totally get your argument. And I think there would be a sizable number of Democrats that would vote for it at the end of the day. I do. But the problem is there are all these Senate Republicans. Mitch McConnell has been at the forefront of this, who say the federal government needs to stay out of this stuff. And suddenly the federal government is becoming the solution to a lot of Republican ills. We're going to take the gun. It's crazy.
Look, this may be part of a messaging issue on our side. That's fine. But that's like saying that driver's licenses are being federalized. We require real ID right now. That's a federal driven.
States determine that stuff. Yes.
Right. But they have to meet federal standards, right? So a real ID in Delaware is the same standard as a real ID in Virginia. Okay. It is now a nationalized standard. Telling people they have to have a proof of citizenship is not nationalizing an election. I don't buy that. That's very different than saying you have to be open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. States can still set the terms of their elections. That's in the Constitution. But to require a proof of citizenship is not federalizing an election. It's
sure,
just not.
It's overriding state. It's overriding what each state decides they want to do. I mean, that is it at the end of the day. Democrats for years said we should, step in Alabama and Florida. We should have a set.
There's a difference. You're not requiring every state to prove that you're a U.S. citizen is not nationalizing an election.
Literally one regulation out of regulation.
Every state determines what is eligible.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Stop. Hold on. Just let me play a quick little exercise. If let's say Maryland right now said, and some of these counties are doing it in local elections. Okay. Yep. So I think it's Tacoma Park near where, like a couple of these places are saying you don't have to be a citizen to vote in our local election. Okay. If they allowed that in Congress and said, okay, great. When there's an election for U.S. Senate, and does the federal government have any say in that? If we said that non-citizens could vote for who your congressional representative there,
Sean,
answer the question. I'm asking you.
What can the federal government overrule Tacoma Park?
So Maryland says that we say that anybody that's in Maryland, whether you're a U.S. citizen or not, can vote in every election in Maryland.
The federal law is you have to be a U.S. citizen to vote. So there you go. So Sean, there's a law, and then Maryland puts together what it wants to do. Like that is what we have in this country. I mean, again, as a Democrat,
80% of Americans disagree with that argument.
Well, look, great. As I have said repeatedly, as a Democrat who thinks that there are a lot of issues with our voting system, I would love the federal government to get involved in nationalizing and standardizing elections. You want one standard, we may have others.
It's not a standard, Dan, to say a standard is saying that you have to be 5'6", or that it has to open at 6 a.m., or the machines have to be calibrated. No one's saying that. They're saying that you actually have to prove that if the criteria is you have to be a U.S. citizen, that there has to be proof of it. It's already
a standard.